July 21st here live in the Tavern. Kind of getting used to this. I don't know. It's weird, man, after doing the Front Porch Live for so long and being used to going live once a week. After doing the Tavern live to tape, basically, which means we shot it live and then, but it was sometimes a week or two ahead of time. I don't know. I miss this. I miss being able to hear from you and you ask questions and kind of drive the conversation instead of me just doing an interview with somebody or ranting for an hour. So this ought to be fun. We're excited about doing this again. Last week started coming back to doing live, and we're going to do this every Monday at 6 o'clock. Today was a great day. We have actually Laura Logan's at the campus right now. She's teaching up at the Legislative Hall, and I assume they're still going. I don't know. I had to leave early. And Justice John Devine was here, and so we've been talking law, and he's a Texas Supreme Court justice, so he's talking about what it's like to do that. And then Laura talking about how we're going to restore journalism in this country. And after just listening to the first half of her talk, I realized I'm not a journalist. So I'm in that category of commentator and definitely not a journalist. I don't do any of the investigative work, and I am definitely not neutral. I have some fairly strong opinions that come out once in a while, maybe all the time. So tonight, as I do the good, the bad, the ugly, yes, you're going to get my opinion on those things. You're going to get my commentary. And, if I step on your toes, I don't care. I hope I stomp on them. And I hope that if you differ with me, that you'll please put that in the chat and we will we'll comment on your comment perhaps. But, look, my job is to basically say there is a plumb line. There is truth, and everything that happens out there, I'm going to weigh it against that plumb line, which of course begins with God's word, but it also includes discernment and includes being willing to, constantly look at the landscape of all the things that are going on, have some interaction with other people where you have that civil discourse so that you can arrive at truth, so that you can figure out how to measure what's going on in the world against that plumb line. And that's what we do. We give you our take on the good, the bad, and the ugly of all the different things that have happened in the culture in the last week. And you may or may not like it, but I hope you'll share it with your friends and family and get them engaged in the discussion too. Because even if you don't like it, even if you disagree with what I'm saying here in the Tavern, that's why the Tavern exists. It's not, we don't call it the Tavern so that I can go, stand on the bar and give a speech to everybody in the tavern that's having dinner that night. It's actually so that we can sit around the table and have those revolutionary discussions about the strategies and tactics necessary to preserve freedom and pass it to the next generation. So the whole Tavern set is about having conversations. So I want to hear back from you what you think about my take on some of these things that have happened. And frankly, help me to pick some of the topics too, because there's so much that is happening right now. It's impossible to keep up. It's been, during the last 4 years with the last administration, it was whack-a-mole just trying to deal with all of the bad stuff that administration was doing. And now it's the exact opposite. We're dealing constantly with good news and essentially the reversal of a lot of the bad that happened over the last 4 years. And much to my surprise, I did not think this would happen so quickly, but a reversal of a lot of what's happened over the last 50 years. So it's not just the stuff that Joe Biden did in the Biden administration, or even what Obama did in the 8 years of having Marxists in the White House. It's also the bad stuff that just as a people, we allowed ourselves to slowly veer off into these principles that are anti-liberty and anti-biblical. And so I'm constantly amazed. I mean, I'm telling you, I know we're all still upset about the Epstein thing and some of these other things that might not be going exactly where we wanted it to go or as fast as we wanted it to go. But those things pale in comparison to the giant leaps forward in restoring liberty principles in this country. And of course, President Trump is at the center of that and leading the charge on that, thankfully, because of the assassination attempt and because of the lawfare and all of the judicial tyranny that took place trying to end his career and keep him from being president again. Because of all that, it essentially radicalized him to being a true lover of liberty. He has become the greatest champion for restoration of basic principles of liberty out of the Constitution and the Declaration and the Bible of any president of my lifetime and maybe any figure in my lifetime. I mean, there are people that are more articulate about the principles of liberty and better grounded in the principles of liberty and have been longtime champions, tilling the ground, sowing seeds, watering, doing hard work all over the nation. People like David Barton and Lance Wallnau and Rob McCoy, people like that have been doing this for a while and been great champions for these things and far more articulate. But none of us have had the impact that Donald Trump has, and that's just that, preparation, not even preparation in his case, but the timing of a person being placed by God in a position to have the power to make positive change and and things happen to them in their life that made them want to make that change and willing to make those changes and do the big things that would have been lambasted by even people on the right, let alone on the left in previous years. This guy does not care. I mean, does not give a flip what anybody thinks or whether or not it's going to be popular. The difference in Trump 2.0 and Trump 1.0 is night and day. I mean, in 1.0, he was so worried about his legacy and was still willing to upset the apple cart and be a little bit of a bull in the china closet. Trump 2.0, I mean, yes, the ego thing is still there. Yes, there's still some concern about the legacy, but it's not at the forefront. It's not the prefrontal cortex like focus and obsession. Instead, the obsession is quite literally righting the ship. This guy, at least from what I've seen and what I observe over the last 6 months, cares far more about leaving America in a better place than it was when he was put in charge, than he cares about his own legacy or any of those things. And that's weird to even say that about a man that was so obsessed with his own legacy that he named every building after himself and all of those things. I'm just so thankful for all those things I just mentioned. That I know it sounds weird, but I'm thankful for the assassination attempt. I'm thankful for the lawfare. And that's just counting it all joy when you experience various trials. That's just living out James. And I don't know if Donald Trump understands the theology of that. I don't know if he understands the what God was telling us in that or not. But the effect of all of those trials has been that we have a president of the United States with the absolute best gospel message on Easter of any president in history, with the, just raw, organic, God, we love you type statements. It's just remarkable. So anyway, all of that to say, we have a lot of good, the bad, and the ugly at this moment in time because this guy went through all those things. So I can't keep up with the good. It's just too much is going on. So I'm just going to hit a couple of those things that I want to make sure we don't miss. One of those is the IRS settlement with the pastors and I forget, I can't even remember now who it was that led that lawsuit, but this is huge. Okay, so we've been fighting this for literally since 1954. So the Johnson Amendment in 1954, if you don't know the history of that was Lyndon Johnson as a senator, but this was before he was president. That was Lyndon Johnson as a senator taking revenge on the pastors in Texas that had campaigned against him. They knew Lyndon Johnson was a dirtbag. They knew this guy was immoral, and so they campaigned against him. They said, this is not a man that we should have in the U.S. Senate. And he ended up winning, gets into the Senate. That was the old Box 13, cheated to win. I mean, it was one of those things. Anyway, he ends up in the Senate, and he gets this rider, this essentially like I forget one or two sentences, into the appropriations bill, and is known as the Johnson Amendment. And it basically said, if you're a nonprofit, if you're a church or anybody that's not that is allowed tax exempt status, you're not supposed to get political. You're not supposed to endorse candidates. You're not supposed to use your nonprofit status to enjoy the tax exempt status, which keeps you from paying taxes, and then use that benefit to then go out and influence politics. Well, I mean, first of all, 100% unconstitutional. There's zero authority in the Constitution for the federal government to prevent a tax-exempt organization from being able to be political. Now, you might say to that, well, Rick, but doesn't the federal government give those organizations their tax-exempt status? And the answer to that is no. Those organizations like the church have a tax-exempt status because of the biblical foundation. Ezra, the book of Ezra, is where we first see tax-exempt status essentially for the Levites and for those who are in ministry, and not just those who are a church, but those who are serving the public good and doing things for the community. So that is a biblical tax-exempt status that the founding fathers said the federal government should recognize and the Constitution should recognize. So it is not Congress that gets to decide that. We've kind of bought into that. We even have pastors that actually think that the government gives them that tax-exempt status, and they're afraid to speak out because they're afraid they'll lose their tax-exempt status. You hear that all the time. Part of that is a fear that was created by not only Lyndon Johnson, but these people like like Barry Lynn, this guy that runs this Americans United for Separation of Church and State. And every year he sends a letter out to all 400,000 churches in America and says, don't you dare talk about politics. If you talk about politics, we're going to turn you in, and we're just warning you that you'll lose your tax-exempt status. And the whole letter is a bunch of baloney. It's all false, but it works. It scares people. It's like an 800-pound gorilla. It's a paper tiger, but it feels like an 800-pound gorilla. And so we always take his letter and mark out all the false stuff, and pretty much all you get is Dear Pastor and sincerely, Barry Lynn. That's all that's left if you take out all the false stuff. But it has worked. It's created a complete, perspective paradigm, a complete paradigm within the nonprofit and the church world that we can't do politics. We're not allowed to do politics. We'll lose our tax-exempt status. Okay, so anyway, that's happened since 1954, and it's been like just a hammer over the head of the church. And so think about that. That's, 70 years. So 70 years of this mentality, not only being what the government and these organizations have used to try to beat pastors and priests and rabbis into submission with, but actually became the mantra of the seminaries. So you've got multiple generations of pastors who came through seminaries that were taught this is the way it is, and that's good, that we somehow can be better in our ministry if we don't speak to the issues of the day. Makes no sense to me. I don't know how you're salt and light if you're literally keeping the salt in the shaker and you're hiding your light under a bushel and you're not going into the darkness and you're not putting the salt into the meat to preserve it. But that became the mentality. And so because of the Johnson Amendment, these seminaries were teaching these pastors to be silent. So that's why so many of you that are watching this now or later in the recording, and you're always asking me, you're like, man, how do I get my pastor to do a biblical citizenship class? Why can't I get my pastor to speak out against abortion or marriage or talk about how bad Marxism is or speaking to these things? That's why they are like that. It's been ingrained in them to be afraid of the government and to actually believe that you're a better Christian and a better pastor, and you're more likely to get people to come to your church to be able to share the gospel with them and hopefully get them to walk the aisle if you don't speak to the issues of the day. Now that's turned out to be the exact opposite of truth, because what happens is when you're milquetoast and you're neutral and you're wimpy and you're afraid to speak to the issues of the day, then people don't get convicted and they don't get truth and they don't know how to respond. I mean, think about all the people that are going to these churches that won't speak to the transgender evil, that won't speak to the mutilization of children and speak out against this, all of these horrible things that have been happening in the communities. So if you're part of the flock and you're going to the church and you're trying to find truth, you're going to church to get truth, you're going to church to find out how to be a good Christian and be a disciple, and your pastor won't speak to that stuff, well, then you're left to get your answers on those things. I mean, obviously you should be searching the word yourself, but most people don't do that. So they get their answers to that by watching the evening news or there is no evening news anymore, by watching whatever the talk show is that you listen to or scrolling on social media. And that's where they end up getting truth, or Googling it, or now I guess, do you call it grokking it? What do you, I don't know. But anyway, looking it up on Grok or whatever. And so that's what's gotten us in this whole mess. So the fact that we now have an IRS settlement, so this is not a statute, this is not a law of Congress, this is not a Supreme Court decision, okay? This is a settlement between the IRS and these afflicted parties that were saying the Johnson Amendment's unconstitutional and you can't tell us that we can't endorse candidates. And in this settlement, the Internal Revenue Service is saying, they're actually agreeing and saying that a pastor should be able to endorse candidates from the pulpit to their congregation. Now, let's dissect that for just a second, okay? Number one, I've said that for 30 years. David Barton has said that for 40 years. We have all said, absolutely, pastors do not lose their freedom of speech by being pastors, and absolutely nonprofit leaders do not lose their freedom of speech by being nonprofit leaders. There is nothing constitutionally that should prevent you from being able to say publicly, either to your tribe or your church or whatever it might be, or to the whole world, this is who I think the best candidate is, or this is what I think is right or wrong about this political party's platform or stance or whatever. That's a freedom of being an American, no matter what your profession, no matter where you are. And so we've said that forever. Now the IRS is finally agreeing, but it's interesting how they've tried to box it in. And so what I said a while ago is that they've said you can endorse a candidate from the pulpit to your church. So they've basically said you're allowed to say who you think the best candidate is, but only almost privately to the members of your church. Wait, what? So are we only allowed to have free? Does the Constitution only apply when you're in certain places or when you're speaking to certain people? So that part is bad or ugly, whichever category you want to put that in. But the good is that it should free up pastors to now, at least in front of their congregation, say, hey, listen, here's who I'm going to vote for, and here's why. That's exactly what happened in the founding era. In the founding era, pastors would get up, this Black Road Regiment would get up and say, hey, we're fighting for the Americans in this revolution, because they didn't call it a revolution, they called it war for independence, but we're fighting for this because biblically da 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 da, and they would lay it out. And then when we started having a constitution and elections and all those things, they started saying, I'm gonna vote for this person because biblically here's where they stand and here's where the other person is. Or they would say, I'm gonna be with this party, whether it was the anti-Mason party or the Federalist or the anti-Federalist or whatever it might be, because biblically, and then they would back it up. Well, I may disagree with your biblical interpretation of why you're for a particular party or whatever, but you absolutely ought to have the freedom to get up in your pulpit and say that to your congregants and to the world. You got to be able to go on YouTube, go on whatever. Tonight we're on Facebook and YouTube and X. You got to be able to go on any of those social media outlets, Rumble, whatever, and say who you're for. And it should not have any repercussion whatsoever on your tax-exempt status. Your tax-exempt status is because you're helping the community. Your tax-exempt status is because our founders understood in a nation that's free, you need the church and private organizations to be able to do philanthropy and to take care of their neighbors and to sow good stuff into the culture, because people have to be able to self-govern in order to live in a free nation. If you can't self-govern, then government has to grow and micromanage your life and take care of you and prevent you from harming your neighbor and all that. So the whole reason for the tax-exempt status of the church and for private philanthropic organizations is because it's good for the culture, because it's good for society. It actually causes government to cost less. So we're okay with that organization not paying taxes, and we're okay with you being able to write those donations off of your taxes, because we know it's going to make government shrink, because these organizations are going to do a better job of taking care of the poor, twice as effective if your church takes care of the poor than if government takes care of the poor. It's the hard bottom dollar. 60% of the money gets to the person in need when you do it through the church, 30% when you do it through government. So it's twice as effective. So all of that to say, we want a tax-exempt status that is unencumbered for these private philanthropic organizations and churches, because it's good for the community, it's good for the tax base, it's good for the whole country. So that IRS settlement is huge. It's good. You should absolutely go to your pastor and say, hey, I see now that you can endorse candidates. Do you want some help researching the candidates? Do you want some good voter guides? iVoterGuide.com is a great place to go to get your voter guide. Would you like to have a voter registration drive? I'll help do that. We need to have some sort of a biblical citizenship class or a Rebuilding Liberty class. Patriot Academy makes them available to churches for free. We should do that so that we can get people informed, so that when you get up in the pulpit and you explain why you're voting for somebody, you've got a bunch of people in the church that went through the principles through Rebuilding Liberty or Biblical Citizenship or one of our other classes, and they'll have your back whenever you do that. So anyway, it opens the door. If you're watching this, use this opportunity with this IRS settlement to get your church more involved. So it's a great, giant leap forward. It's not all the way to where it should be, but it's a massive leap forward. So it's very, very good. A little bit of bad and ugly just in terms of limitations, but very, very good. So that's item one that I wanted to cover. Let's see. There is, it's not enough for Donald Trump to build the wall. They're building a secondary wall. So there's a secondary wall that's being built. It's in New Mexico, and I forget, it's like a 7-mile stretch. So you're going to have the big, beautiful border wall, but then another wall, I guess, if people climb over. I don't know why they're doing it, but anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to point that out. We're not only going to build the wall, we're going to build a secondary wall, which, hey, go for it. Whatever it takes to make sure people are only coming through the front door, not the back door. Quick one, Pete Hegseth apologizes for the Army calling pro-life Americans terrorists during the Biden era. Thank you, Pete Hegseth. I don't know if you remember this. This was going on in these trainings in the military, where they were in these trainings literally calling pro-life Americans. They were putting them on the list of terrorists. They put Turning Point. They put people like Patriot Academy. I can't remember if we were on that one or not. I think Wall Builders was. A bunch of our friends, let's just put it that way. A lot of the organizations that we work with were on this list, where the military was being trained to believe that we're anti-American terrorists, that we need to be watched, that we need to be followed. This was your government training your military to think like that. That was an Orwellian, just all part of the persecution of Republicans and conservatives by the Marxists and Joe Biden and that whole administration trying to divide the country and move us towards a totalitarian state. So thank God that we defeated that, stopped it, pushed it back, and we now have a Secretary of Defense saying, hey, this was our Department of Defense that I'm now in charge of that did this just a couple of years ago, and I want to apologize for the Department of Defense that I now represent. So that's really, really good, and another good sign, another one of those, giant leaps forward. Trump administration rejects the World Health Organization agreement. This is big. This is huge. This is the opposite of what Joe Biden wanted to do. You might recall, if you were watching our Front Porch Live at the time, when Joe Biden was trying to get us to be a part of the World Health Organization treaty, what they were doing was they were trying to submit our national sovereignty to the World Health Organization, essentially controlled by China and these other countries, so that when there was another pandemic, when they came out with another virus or created some other, lab-grown virus, that Anthony Fauci should be hung at high noon after a trial, of course, once he's convicted of treason and convicted of all the things that he did, at least spend the rest of his life in prison. But when he was creating all these things and doing this gain-of-function research and funding it with our tax dollars, let's say another one of those things gets out of the lab and causes some, terrible virus out there. What these people wanted to do, Joe Biden and his team, or whoever was running the show, since we know Joe Biden was out to lunch, what they wanted to do was basically take America's decision-making authority and submit it to the World Health Organization so that we have to do whatever they say we have to do. Now, there's a clause in the Declaration of Independence. Don't forget, Rebuilding Liberty, right? 250th is coming up. I should have checked my numbers, but 350 days, I think, from right now, is the 250th of the nation. So our whole course is about bringing the Declaration of Independence back to life and actually talking about all the principles in there. And one of the grievances in the Declaration, if I can find it here, let's see. Not he is administrator, he has refused, he has dissolved, nope, he is called together, nope, that's not it. He did a lot of bad stuff, so I gotta find the one that I'm looking for. Refused to pass law, forbidden, it's erected a multitude, that's my favorite. It's effect. Oh, here it is, okay. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Okay, so we fought a war, had a revolution over that kind of stuff, over the leader, the king, the prince, as Jefferson called him, trying to subject us to laws that are foreign to us, that to people that we don't have any say in who they are, and acts of pretended legislation. That's exactly what Joe Biden was trying to do with the World Health Organization. So the fact that we are now rejecting that with this administration and saying, no, we will not submit our decision-making and our national sovereignty to the World Health Organization, to any other, to the UN. No one else, no other entity is going to tell America what to do, especially in these situations, like another pandemic where you're getting conflicting stories and science and nobody really knows what to do. And now we're going to submit ourselves to their mandates of how we're, destroy our economy or do some of the absolutely absurd, stupid things that we did during COVID. Okay, so I think that was all the headlines. There was a lot of other stuff. We had the, let's see, we rejected it. I thought I had one more. Oh, how can I not comment on the revelation by Tulsi Gabbard that President Obama and his administration clearly were trying to interfere with the election. Now, I should have prepared a little bit more for this particular topic. I have not read all of the releases and everything, but absolutely, if they were trying to thwart the will of the American people and change the outcome of an election or impact the outcome of an election with lies that they knew were lies, all the things that she's saying essentially treasonous, that these were treasonous actions on the part of President Obama and his administration. So everybody's kind of wondering if President Trump is serious when he's talking about prosecutions of Obama and the other people in his administration that did this. I think he's absolutely serious. And I think it absolutely should be done. Let's not forget that if you don't prosecute these kind of things, you get more of it. So if you don't want to have another COVID crackdowns, COVID cult, control of everybody's and throwing out the Constitution and all those things, if you don't want that to happen again, you have to prosecute Anthony Fauci. You have to prosecute Rachel Walensky and all the others that lied to the American people. Otherwise, you end up with the exact same thing. It's the whole reason we had the Nuremberg trials. You're trying to prevent another Holocaust. You're trying to prevent another World War II type situation So you prosecute the wrongdoers. If you don't prosecute the wrongdoers, then 20 years from now, 40 years from now, however long it is, some tyrant is going to go, well, they got away with it. I'm going to get away with it. They're going to do their cost benefit analysis, and it might not dissuade the completely crazy person that's going to do it no matter what, but it'll certainly dissuade some people. And so the same applies here. If you don't have if you don't have a Department of Justice that actually does justice, that doesn't just release files and doesn't just say that shouldn't happen, but actually does justice, actually prosecutes, which is part of justice, is not only our due process and all that, is not only for us to defend ourselves if we're wrongly accused. There's no justice if you don't rightly accuse those who have harmed others. We have to actually prosecute these people in order to prevent it from happening again, because you're going to end up with another Obama type in the White House. It's just the pendulum's going to swing at some point. You're going to end up with another Joe Biden type in the White House. I wish that wasn't true. I would love, but you go through history. We've had Woodrow Wilson. We've had all these. You've got terrible presidents that in a free society, you do end up with that. And so I think we have to prosecute these guys. I don't know if he can actually, if there's enough political will for him to prosecute Obama himself. It's probably going to be the, whole, was it Nixon about, oh no, it was Reagan. What did the president know and when did he know it? That it's probably going to come down to that. But I don't think we shy away from that just because some people say, oh, see, you're just doing tit for tat. It's just Trump getting them back for prosecuting him. Who cares if they say that? Do the right thing. If there were laws broken, if they did lie, if they did violate all those things, if Tulsi Gabbard's right and it's treasonous activity, then 100% they should be prosecuted. And same goes for the whole Epstein thing. Say the same thing I said last week. Yes, we should keep pushing and keep demanding. Look what happened since we talked about it last week. There was enough pressure that they started releasing some, more of the information. And I think there'll be more that comes out. I'll say it again. President Trump, I think, handled that poorly in the things that he said about us as his supporters. I think Pam Bondi handled it poorly. I think that whole thing was a fumble. It was one, majorly mishandled piece out of hundreds of issues that they've actually handled really, really well. So all of you that decided you're no longer a Donald Trump supporter and you're no longer MAGA and the whole system is flawed and the whole system is going to fall and there's no good people anymore and blah, blah, blah. You go cry in your beer or whatever and stop talking to people and depressing other people if that's going to be you. If you've been on the fence and wanting to do that but haven't done that yet, then I'm here to talk to you because I'm trying to pull you off of the ledge and say, we're going to have some losses. We're going to have some fumbles. We're going to have turnovers. Doesn't mean we can't still win the game. Doesn't mean we can't still be the champions. We are on our way to winning the game. We are on our way to being the champions for liberty and getting this thing turned around. And this was one minor in comparison to everything else. Please don't write me and say, oh, Rick, you're saying pedophilia is a minor thing. And you're No, I've said it over and over again. This is huge. It shows the deep state. It shows that both sides are evil and have done evil things. I still stand by all of that. But I am not going to take that one issue and say, if we don't manage to prosecute on this, that everything else is a failure. You got to get everything you can. As my mama says, who's sitting here in the studio with me, you do the best you can with what you got where you are. She taught me that a long time ago, and I still try to have that philosophy. And we're doing pretty darn good with what we've got and where we are. I would say President Trump is doing an amazing job with what he's got, where he is, and we need to continue to support him. I still trust the guy in the room, and that hasn't changed at all. Okay, that's all I had on my list. So Elisha, I'm going to pull up my chat here, and you are looking at the chat too. If you've got any of those that you think we should answer, go for it. Anybody out there that's got any questions, type them in to the chat on your whatever you're on. If you're on YouTube or you're on, here it is, live chat. Okay, there we go.
So we have one question from Ryan DeCosta asking, yes, is a good way to start conversations with pastors, maybe by having a candidate meet and greet.
Is it a good way to start conversations with pastors by having a candidate meet and greet? That's going to depend on the pastor because just bringing candidates into the equation might be a little bit too much for them right off the bat. I think it might. Ryan, of course, we've talked about this at some of the coach conferences and Constitution conferences too that you were at. I think Lance Wallnau's approach is exactly the right approach. I think the first step with a pastor is to say, would you trust me enough to have a Bible study on what it means to be a good neighbor and a good citizen on Monday nights or whatever here at the church, and invite whoever wants to come. And if they say no or they hem-haw around, then say, what would I need to do to earn your trust to be a part of that, and or to do that? And I think that's the first place to start. Again, very much depends on your involvement in the church up to this point. And if you're new to that church, it probably is not going to, be successful to go try to do a biblical citizenship class or anything, unless they are already very active and you're just offering another program. If they have not been politically active and they have not spoken to the culture and done things, it needs to be somebody that's been at that church a while, that has, paid tithes for a while there, that has volunteered and done things, and just been a good member of the church, that ends up asking that question. As far as doing the candidate form, if you've been there a while and you've done classes or whatever, then yes, I would say your step, Ryan, is definitely the right step. Before asking the pastor to endorse, ask the pastor, say, hey, we all want to know who to vote for. We want to be good citizens and good stewards of our vote. And a lot of churches have candidate forms where you invite a lot of the candidates and just give them a chance to say who they are and what they're about, and just help us to become informed, or even just to introduce all the candidates of all parties to our people in our church. And so I know a lot of churches that do that, and it's very successful. It's good for the community. It is great for the candidates, just to know that you're praying for them. And I mean, even if they're, not, of our particular persuasion, right? Sometimes you live in a district that you're not going to get a Republican elected, you're not going to get a conservative elected. And so sometimes you need to reach out and build a relationship with that elected representative that is not with us on most things. Start praying for them, start getting to know them, and you may get them to vote with us on one or two issues. That's better than none. So I like your idea, Ryan. I think that's a good thing to do with your church for sure. The way it was worded, I just want to make sure it's not the first thing we ask a pastor to do, because education's a lot easier, right? It's a lot easier to just say, we're just going to take a class and get educated on what the Bible says about how to treat our neighbors and how we should do our government. And that is almost a little bit more safe, if you will, than candidates. Whoa, now we're really getting political. So move towards that, and then do it. I see the comment from Alex about, with Stephen Colbert and his show getting axed, who do you think will be the next late night comedian to go? Hopefully Jimmy Kimmel. So yeah, I would love for Jimmy Kimmel to be gone. I honestly get confused between those two guys because they're both so bad, and I don't watch any of the late night stuff anymore. I mean, the only one that I ever used to watch even just a little bit or watch clips was Jimmy Fallon, and then way back, Mom and I will remember Johnny Carson. I don't know if anybody else watching will, but yeah, and then Conan O'Brien and David Letterman, the olden days. I can't believe David Letterman I'm saying is the olden days. And Jay Leno, he was pretty good. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I do know who should host the Tonight Show. I think it should be me. I think I should have the Tonight Show. So everybody send in your letters. I'm sure that will happen. Yeah, right. What else, Elijah?
We got some curiosity as to the release date for Rebuilding Liberty.
Yes. Okay, so I will confess my failure tonight. I should have been done with Rebuilding Liberty. So this is an advanced copy. We only have a handful of these. This was for editing purposes and to get it in the hands of some folks prior to the national class. And right after this, we're going to be done here in about 15 minutes. Right after our time together in the Tavern, we will have the 4th week of the Rebuild Liberty course in our national class. So if you're not in that class, go to patriotacademy.com right now, click on the national class, get signed up. It's free. It's just a couple of clicks, and then you can join us at 7 o'clock for the final week. And it's just the video for tonight. The workbook is not done yet. It is still on my computer, waiting to be finalized, and for me to put the final edits in. And then the book. So there's a workbook to the Rebuild Liberty course. That'll be a spiral-bound workbook that you do as you do the course. And then this is called the blueprint, a blueprint for Rebuilding Liberty just in time for the 250th. That and the workbook should be ready. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this publicly. My staff's going to freak out. Should be ready by August 15th. You should be able to place orders in our store by August 15th if I will finish my job. So everybody's waiting on me to get it done. And hopefully in the next few days I can. As you know, we have had mass chaos at our campus. We've been creating a city, Constitution City, Texas, and so we've got 250 people at our campus right now, and we've got our intensive going on, which is about 50 students that are here for the whole month. We're doing all kinds of cool stuff with them. We've got all these founding families that are here, and they've been working on the campus, getting all kinds of stuff done. We're trying to help the flood victims and do stuff there. It's just been insane. Okay, so I'm not making excuses, but I'm making excuses. You know what I'm saying? I just haven't gotten it done yet. So, let's see what else. Oh, I should say about the rebuilding there. Yeah, thank you, Colleen, for putting that in there. Hosting the class is totally free, and you can start that now. So you can sign up as a coach or host, use that link that Colleen just put in there, and get signed up. And then in your coach dashboard, the new course will be there. The week 4 video is, no kidding, being finished today. It'll air tonight. We might have the final draft ready for tonight. I'll find out in about 15 minutes. Reagan is working feverishly to get it ready in time for tonight. But if not, then it'll be close to the final draft. Anyway, we're going to play that tonight on the national class. Join us in a few minutes. And then by the end of this week, we'll have all the videos wrapped up and finalized. So we'll eventually have, I don't have one of the thumb drives with me, but Biblical Citizenship, we always made that available on thumb drive. We had DVDs for Biblical Citizenship. A lot of people bought those. I don't know if anybody used them. I don't know if anybody actually uses the DVD player anymore. I like having DVDs just because I can put it on my shelf. And if nothing electronic on my computer works, well, then why would a DVD player work? That doesn't make any sense. If the EMP goes off and we have no power, but for some reason I feel more secure just knowing I have the DVDs. I don't know why that is, but that's why I buy them. Maybe that's why so many people buy them. We're not doing that for Rebuild Liberty, though. We're only going to have the thumb drive, or you can stream it out of your dashboard. But all of that is coming. I don't think the thumb drive will be ready by August 15th. It takes them a little longer to make it, but you can stream it out of your coach dashboard, and the thumb drive will be soon thereafter. What else, bud? You see any other questions I need to?
We have one question from Brenda Carlin.
All right, Brenda.
Regarding the Supreme Court of the United States, should the court always explain why it doesn't take a case? Also, can you clarify standing and whether it being used properly by the court?
Okay, the first part, I'll do the standing, and then what was the first part? Why the court doesn't explain, should the court?
Should the court always explain why it doesn't take a case?
Oh, why it doesn't take a case? Okay, so two-part question. Number one, should the Supreme Court grant cert, meaning certiorari? It means that they're going to hear the case. If they don't grant, then the case is basically stands as it was decided by the last next highest court. So let's say you sue in federal district court, you win, and then the other side appeals it up to your Court of Appeals. So for us here in Texas, that'd be the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Goes up to the Fifth Circuit, you fight it out at the Fifth Circuit, and the other side wins. And so then you turn around and appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, because now you want to take it to a higher source, right? And then the U.S. Supreme Court only grants cert on a handful of cases, a few dozen cases every year. That's it. And everything else gets turned down. So it's very, very rare that you actually get heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. So if you won at the district court level and then you lost at the Court of Appeals and then you appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court denies cert, then you lose. So that Fifth Circuit opinion, in my case in Texas, would be the final decision on your particular case. If they grant cert, then that means they're now going to hear the case. And so then you can, get it at the U.S. Supreme Court. And when they deny cert, they almost never explain. Now, sometimes they'll deny cert, which means they didn't get, I think it's four justices have to want to hear the case in order for them to hear it. And if they don't hear it, sometimes, let's say it's 2 of them that wanted to hear it, and they couldn't get to 4, so they didn't hear it, it gets denied, so that previous court ruling stands. Sometimes one or 2 of those that wanted to hear it and didn't get to, they will actually issue an opinion that's like a dissenting opinion, because they lost in terms of getting to hear it, but they'll make their argument for why we should have heard it, why they should have overruled, or why they should have at least heard it and had a chance to rule on it. There were several of those during COVID. There were several cases, even in the election. So after the 2020 election, and this kind of goes to the second part of your question, in the 2020 election, some of the challenges over the cheating that took place in a lot of these states and the blatant violations of the Constitution, where a Secretary of State or a state Supreme Court or a governor changed election law without the legislature in that state, which is completely unconstitutional. The Constitution gives that power only to the legislature, not any of those other players. And where that happened and people sued against that, the Supreme Court never heard the case. They denied cert on all of those cases, which was, I was furious about that. It was complete failure of the U.S. Supreme Court. And in some of those cases, Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, Clarence Thomas, the greatest judge in the history of judges, Sam Alito a close second. I don't know, Deborah might fit in, but anyway, Clarence or Justice Thomas and Justice Alito issued this, I guess you call it a dissenting opinion, even though it was really just an opinion about them not hearing the case, basically saying, this is silly. Why are we not hearing this? This is going to create more confusion in the future about what is legal in these, changing of election laws. We should clarify what our position is. And so that was their way of saying we should have heard it. There was another one I remember 5 years ago, and it was a Second Amendment case, and I can't remember the facts of the case. I just remember that Gorsuch and Thomas did the same thing. The Supreme Court did not hear the case, did not grant cert, and so they issued an opinion on the facts of the case, actually. And it was one of these cases where somebody was challenging, and it might have been Chicago. It was one of these cities that has all these gun laws preventing you from being able to carry anywhere. And they basically, this was before the Bruen case. So the Bruen case took care of this concern, but it was before that case. And Thomas, it was where I got the line from Thomas and Gorsuch where they said, if you think that the Second Amendment is so that you can carry your gun from the kitchen to the bedroom or kitchen to the living room, you don't understand the Second Amendment at all, because it was all about whether or not you could carry your gun outside of your home and in public and at public places. And so anyway, it was good for them to do that and explain why they thought they should have granted cert, because it helped clarify even the right constitutional position, even though we didn't win that case at the time. And then later, when the Bruen case finally was actually heard by the court, basically they implemented that philosophy into the Bruen case. So that's a lot of words to basically say, I don't think it's physically possible for them to explain every time why they deny cert. So it's got to be a big enough issue, or a justice, one of the 9, has to care enough about that issue and feel like there's enough sharpened points about that issue to make it worth putting out an opinion about it, because they deny cert on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases. So anyway, that would be my opinion on that. On standing, I think it's a real problem. I think a lot of those cases, a lot of those election cases were denied based on standing, and I frankly think the court got it wrong on that. I think the idea that a candidate that's on the ballot that was suing to say these parts of the Constitution were broken because in this case, I think it was a Pennsylvania case where the governor and the state Supreme Court changed election law and gave advantages to Democrats by, basically changing the election law to force more polling places into Democrat areas and all these crazy things. And then, of course, the accepting absentee ballots way after the election. I mean, all kinds of changes to how the election was going to take place, or even accepting absentee ballots. So they did all that. So one of the candidates that lost as a result of the changes, or at least believed that was the reason that they lost, sued, and the Supreme Court said they didn't have standing. How does a candidate that has been specifically affected, directly affected by that change, not have standing? How does any voter in that district or in that state that was affected by that, how do they not have standing? How do you not have standing if you were affected in that way? And they've got all these, not constitutional reasons, but all these jurisprudence reasons over the years, over the 2 centuries now, of these judges issuing these opinions, tweaking civil jurisprudence this way and that way and all this, and they've got all these buckets that and rules that they try to use for deciding standing or not, and it's just become so ridiculously complicated. And it's why I call it the Constitution instead of the Constitution. It should be simple, simple, simple. If you're affected by that and you can make an argument for why it affected you, you should have standing to be able to get into court. And now that also means on the other side of that when the opinion is given, that it should only affect the people that had standing. It shouldn't affect the whole country. That's what this latest round of judicial battles has been about. These these individual, local federal judge opinions doing these injunctions that affect the whole country. So you take these 2 parties sue against each other, and then you take their facts and whatever their circumstances were, and you make an opinion. I don't even like saying decision, but an opinion by these judges, and then you try to apply that to the whole country. You stop the president from deporting, rapists and murderers and thugs. You stop the border wall from being built. You stop all these things from happening. one district judge doing that based on the parties that came before them. They should only be able to affect the parties before them. So if you're suing on behalf of, let's say, Moms for Liberty, they sued. I'm trying to remember what the exact fact circumstances were, but because they were a party to it, anyone who was a member of Moms for Liberty was able to benefit from that lawsuit and able to have the, I can't remember what it was. It was something to do with parents. It's always about parental rights because that's what Moms for Liberty fights for. It had something to do with notice for parents. I'm sorry, somebody out. I know we got some Moms for Liberty people watching. Maybe you can remember and put it in the chat. I'm sorry, Tina, I can't remember. Tina Deskovich runs Moms for Liberty, and if she's watching this, she's gonna be like, Rick, we talked about this on your show. How can you not remember? I can't remember because my brain is too full of too many things right now. Okay, anything else?
We got one more.
Yeah.
One more question.
Go for it.
A couple people asking for an update on Constitution City.
Great question. Update on Constitution City. Okay, so quick reminder, 60 seconds on how you become a city in Texas. We are becoming a type 3, type C municipality. And so there's about 5 different, there's A, B, and C, and then there's home rule, and there's, I forget the other one, types of cities in Texas. And so we're chartering and incorporating under type C, which is the smallest. Actually, I think it is the smallest of all the cities. And so to do that, we have to basically file a petition with our county judge in the county where we live that proves that we have the statutory requirements to become a type C municipality. And those requirements are, you have to have a certain number of inhabitants within the boundaries. You have to show what the boundaries are going to be, and those boundaries have to be less than 2 square miles. So that's it. Those are the requirements to become a city. And then you have to, that petition has to be signed by at least 10% of the people that are registered to vote in that in the boundaries of what you're asking to become a city. So the county judge then takes that petition, looks at the affidavits, looks at the petition by the voters in that area, and if all the T's have been crossed and the I's have been dotted, then the county judge signs an order for an election to take place within the boundaries that you've created for that city. And so that's what the county judge has just agreed to do. He looked over our petition, looked over all of our stuff, and we had a great phone call last week. You might have seen the reel that we released today announcing that. And so he and I are going to meet this week with the election people and our council and get that order signed and get the election, ballot initiative on the ballot for November 4th. And so then November 4th is the statewide election in Texas. And so only those people that are registered to vote within our little boundaries here will be able to vote in November, but will vote to become a city at that point. So that'll be the question on the ballot is, whether or not to incorporate as Constitution City, Texas. Tell me that's not the coolest name ever. And remember that our address here is 1776 Patriot Way. So Patriot Academy's address will be 1776 Patriot Way, Constitution City, Texas. It's going to be so cool, and I think people are going to come from miles around to visit Independence Hall in Constitution City, Texas, and hopefully that includes you. We got 40 cottages now. We got an incredible legislative hall. We're doing the Patriot Experience, so anyone can come in. Now you don't have to be just the young people, 16 to 25, to do our legislative training, what we call Leadership Congress. We now do that for everybody under a program called Patriot Experience. And so you get to do a legislative simulation, you get communications training, Constitution training, and we have some amazing gun ranges and the best instructors on the planet. And so you can come to a constitutional defense course where you actually learn to defend yourself physically. And I don't care if you've never touched a gun in your life or you are a police officer, this is the best training you will have ever gone through. And I say that because we've put close to 10,000 people through it, and I hear that all the time, including from a SWAT officer who said it was the best training they ever had. And a lot of people that never touched a gun, or maybe they shot a gun once or twice, or maybe they grew up on the ranch, or maybe they grew up hunting, so they were decent with a rifle, but never actually had handgun training. That was me. I know it totally changed my thinking. So anyway, everybody out there should go through constitutional defense, and you can do that. We'll have those courses starting up again in 1st of September. Not quite every week, but almost every week we'll have an opportunity for you to do that class. So anyway, come visit Constitution City and stay in one of our amazing cottages. Mom, you think the cottages are nice? I mean, you got checked in today, and
they're very nice.
Very nice. Got what'd they say in the video that we made? The lady from Philadelphia, she said the pillows are fluffy and the beds are soft,
Yes.
and everything. So anyway, you can actually go watch that video on our website at patriotacademy.com. But we'd love for you to come visit Constitution City. So don't forget, Jesus is Lord, and we are going to restore liberty in this country. And thank you for being a part of it. I mean, where else can you go into a tavern and see Jesus is Lord? And don't forget, the taverns back then were restaurants. Okay, so I'm not telling you what's in my cup, what I'm drinking in the tavern, but it's not Patriot Brew this time, which is a coffee. So those of you that don't know, Patriot Brew is the best coffee in the country. And you should be drinking Patriot Brew. And if you're not, go to Patriot Brew. Is it .com or .org? I think it's .com. PatriotBrew.com. Is that right?
I think so.
I think that's right. Yeah. Had a couple of bags of it around here somewhere, but I don't know what to do with them. And by the way, it's sparkling water, just in case you're wondering. All right. Ah, that's good. Okay. Anything else? Mom, think of anything else? What am I forgetting?
I'm watching, so I know what you put in that cup.
Oh yeah, she's my witness. My mama saw it, right? What was it?
It was water.
Yeah, see, it was water, sparkling water. So, all right, we'll see you in 9 minutes over at the Rebuild Liberty class. And I think maybe Colleen or somebody in here put something about how to go sign up for the class. But I think you just go to patriotacademy.com. Oh, look, they got a national class. Look, thank you, Colleen, you're so good. There's a link right there for signing up for the national class. And tonight's week 4, but even if you haven't seen any of the previous 3 weeks, tonight's still going to be great. Trust me, Lance Wallnow is teaching on convergence. It's one of the best videos we've ever put out. The combination of what Lance has to say about convergence and us not being done. Mom, is it okay if I say how old you are?
Yes.
How old are you?
I'm proud of it.
How old are you?
82.
82. I don't care if you're 82. She's still out there making a difference, still out there talking to patriots all over the country. Some of you may have even been called by her talking about Patriot Academy. Still goes and plays music for people all over the place. I don't care if you're 8 or 80, you're not done yet. And so Lance talks about that convergence, how we're not done, what's God called us to. And the mix of Lance teaching on that and Victor Marks talking about the generation coming up right now and their convergence and how important it is for them to get involved. It's powerful. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss this tonight. Be sure and watch Rebuilding Liberty with us tonight over in the national class. Everybody have a great night. I'll see you next week right here in the Tavern.